All right, so for the Texans at Ravens, this spread has remained the same since it opened. The Ravens are 9.5-point favorites. The total opened at 46, and it's now down to 43.5. Keep in mind as we go towards this weekend, for the games that are not played in domes, we will be watching the weather very, very closely.
Yeah,
but Matt,
it's moved down because there's bad weather.
Right.
There's now bad weather expected.
Yeah.
A lot of wind.
Winds.
After on Tuesday's show, I took the over at 44.5.
Don't you love that?
Yeah, it's great.
What do you
Good
like
job.
in this game, Matthew, with the offense, both offenses, at least from a maybe daily fantasy perspective and the actual game perspective?
But I'll tell you, by the way, I still like the Texans plus 9.5. I'll just say dogs, especially in the divisional round, traditionally dogs have covered, I think. And so I could see the Ravens starting slow a little bit. Again, it's been a little while since they played real football. So I like the Texans to cover the 9.5 here as well. But from a perspective of daily fantasy, I'll say Nico Collins is averaging over 21 points over his last 4 games. 31% target share in back-to-back games. Again, it's almost 10-point underdogs. They should be throwing at least 7 receptions, 80 receiving yards in 3 straight games for Nico Collins. Again, Noah Brown's not going to be in this game as well, so he should just get a massive target share in a game where they should be throwing, kind of like Nico Collins there.
Yeah, a little torn on this game, Connor, because on one hand, I don't think the Ravens are the absolute juggernaut that everyone has accepted them as, because, I mean, they were 6.5-point dogs against San Francisco, like 2 real games ago for them, and Brock Purdy imploded, and then the Dolphins just didn't show up the next week. And obviously the Ravens have to get a ton of credit for those 2 wins, but this is a team that also, like, Deshaun Watson went 14 for 14 in the second half with a fractured shoulder and a high ankle sprain at the same time on the road. They really struggled in that Chargers game on Sunday Night Football, the Ravens. Like, I'm not sure that they are the all-world team that everyone is making them out to be. At the same time, Stroud hasn't really had to do it against elite defenses that much. And I know he just beat Cleveland, but that Cleveland defense wasn't the same team that it was earlier in the season. And I think back to that Jets game where Stroud just couldn't do anything. So do you think the Ravens defense is going to shut Stroud down?
No, I don't think anybody could do that right now with Stroud, quite honestly. Since he's come back from that concussion, he's just kind of elevated his performances. So no, that's why we like the 9.5 points so much in this game. Even if there is bad weather, if it's bad weather, it'll still be a close game. But if there's not, I think that the Texans, with their pass script that we've seen when they need it the most, will be absolutely fine. It's like the Ravens are loaded with corners, too. They have a great safety in Kyle Hamilton. Marlon Humphrey's a really good corner in this league, but there's other places you could target against their secondary.
The defense does have 31 takeaways this season. That's tied for most in the NFL. They also have 60 sacks this season. That's most in the NFL. So the Ravens defense, who's 3,500 on DraftKings if you're playing daily fantasy this weekend, I think they're sort of interesting as well. Zay Flowers very quietly, at least 19 fantasy points in 4 of the past 5. He scored in 4 of the past 5 as well. I'm not really scared about the secondary of the Ravens. So I think Zay Flowers is kind of interesting. Last thing for me on C.J. Stroud, though, I just want to say, this is going to sound weird, but go with me here for a second. Last spring at the NFLPA Rookie Premiere, I got to interview a ton of people. I interviewed C.J. Stroud as well. I interviewed Tank Dell. But one of the other people that I interviewed was Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was obviously a wide receiver at Ohio State with C.J. Stroud. And I remember talking to him, and I said something to the effect of like, hey, how much pressure do you feel? You're coming in. There's been so much success for rookie wide receivers over the last couple of years. Think about Jefferson, Jamar Chase, their rookie years, and especially Ohio State wide receivers, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, right? Hey, JSN, like you're one of the high draft picks. You're coming into a situation. You're going to be on a team with Lockett and Metcalf. How much pressure do you feel as an Ohio State wide receiver, highly drafted, coming into an offense that has high expectations for you? And he had the best answer I've ever heard. He goes, well, at Ohio State, we have a saying, pressure is a privilege. Pressure is a privilege. And he just went on to talk about the meaning of that and how just the idea that, that you shouldn't be scared from pressure, that pressure only comes when there are high expectations, when there's something real on the line, and that they operate under that mentality, that pressure is a privilege. And I've never forgotten that. Yeah. And so I have to assume that if that's JSN's mentality from his days at Ohio State, it's also C.J. Stroud's. And every time we've seen C.J. Stroud challenged, whether it was, beat the Colts or go home, beats the Colts. Hey, you're up against the number 1 defense in the NFL, and Myles Garrett of the Cleveland Browns, win or go home, and he dominates. And I don't know, I don't have a stat for you other than the fact that I don't think I'm saying anything crazy or controversial here, but that kid is special.
Yeah,
that kid is effing special. Yep. And I just keep going back to that pressure as a privilege. I ain't worried about C.J. Stroud on the road to Baltimore.
Yeah, there's a 0% chance he'll be overawed by the occasion. I mean, I think still probably the biggest game of his career, including this one upcoming, was playing Georgia in the semifinal.
Right.
Like, if he get played the way he did in that game, with his receivers going down left and right, I think that he'll be fine. It's just, obviously, he doesn't have to go up against Kyle Hamilton and co in that game.
No, which is fair, by the way. And I'm being told that pressures of privilege originated from Billie Jean King, but it's something obviously that Ohio State has adopted. And I don't know. I'm in on C.J. Stroud. You know, and by the way, I like the over 1.5 touchdown passes for C.J. Stroud in this game. Again, they're 9.5-point underdogs here. I mean, you know, Lamar Jackson 7,900. If you want to go there, I think he'll have a good game as well. But
good to see as well, friend of the show, Mark Andrews, full practice yesterday.
That's a big one.
Looks like he'll be back.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest RotoWorld fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.